Hey, it's me, Vicky. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world. Now I'm gonna read out for you today what happens the trial of the monster dads, Jamie Varley and JohnGF, who, even if you look at this with the best sort of will in the world, this little baby, Preston Davey, would still be alive. Likely would still be alive if he hadn't fallen into the hands of these two monster dads who were trying to adopt him. They had him in there for 4 months, in which he sustained over 40 injuries. Very suspect videos and photos were taken. There's questions of sex abuse. Anyway, at the end of the day, the one thing we do know for sure is Preston died. After having all those injuries, he's admitted in 4 months. Very suspicious injuries. I think all the medical people agree that the injuries were suspicious, that he did not die from natural causes, and he did not die from drowning, which originally is what Monster Dad number 1, Vicious Varley, Jamie Varley, what he said had happened. He went and had a shower, left the baby in the bath with water in it while he went and had a shower, and when he came out, Preston was down in the water, according to him. But all the medical, even the defence forensic examiner said Preston did not die from drowning. Although he would not be conclusive about what he did die of, unlike the prosecution medical experts who said Preston died of obstruction to the airway. Even the defence owner, who would not go that far, he said cause of death was unascertained, but he did agree it was not drowning, it was not natural causes. So there you go. So the point that we're at in the trial today is going to be a very interesting day, because we're going to hear the defence for Monster Dad number 2, Twonk number 2, JohnGF. Well, I think it's generally accepted that Jamie Varley, who was the prime sort of caregiver to Preston because he was off work and he was the prime babysitter, if you like, and John was at work when a lot of the things happened. But still, he wasn't always at work. Wasn't always at work. He wasn't at work the day that Preston was in a very strange position up against the cot bars with blue lips and dribble coming from his mouth. John wasn't at work that day. And also, John has come out with some very strange explanations for these injuries in his police interviews. And also, despite a brief separation for about 2 weeks after this all happened, a couple of years ago it was when the actual events happened, John and Jamie are back together now. They are a partnership again. And, so John has accepted whatever Varley has said, and he's back with him. And they're having a great time, I think. Well, maybe not at the moment because they're in custody now. But after Preston died, wonder what they were doing, because we can see that Jamie Varley changed his look completely. Just looks like he's come back off holiday to me, with the long hair, blonde streaks, facial hair, tan. Probably earned his freedom now that Preston wasn't there to worry about anymore. So I think generally it just feels like, they thought it was a good idea at the time. Maybe they deliberately wanted to adopt a baby to abuse it. If not, maybe they just sort of fell into it. I just don't know. I've been thinking about this so much. I was thinking about today when I was driving back from dropping my son off at work. Why did they want a baby in their 30s? And I was thinking about, when I wanted a baby, it's like your hormones sort of take over, don't they? I think if anyone just used their head, they probably would never have a baby, because it is hard work, but your hormones take over, don't they? It can't be the case here. Maybe friends of theirs had babies, or I definitely do not think that what they wanted to do was give a good chance in life, because the way they treated little one, as they always refer to him, is so sanctimonious, and he was just like an accessory in their life, just like a designer bag or something. That's how it feels to me anyway. And certainly the way they treated him just wasn't nice, Jamie Varley in particular felt like every time he got exacerbated or irritated or depressed, something terrible happened to Preston. And it's like almost Munchausen's by proxy, because then he'd be on the message to John, who'd be working away somewhere. And was Jamie jealous of who he was working with? And it'd be like, you get home here now, I just want to shower, I can't do this, I can't do. He had his mum up the road. He's such a drag queen, this guy. He wasn't, didn't he know that being a father or a mother, a parent, it's difficult. You can't leave your child of 13 months old in a bath for 14 minutes like he did and videoed it. You can't put them in the spinning cups at the park and spin them until they're so dizzy their eyes rock back in their head and video it and send it to John. These are not even, what's the word I'm looking for? These are not in contention. These are things he's admitted to do. There were videos and photos. So he definitely did them. Shouting boo to him and frightening him when he's fallen asleep. Twisting him so hard when they're having their dance. Let's twist again. Oh, and of course, Preson up with a broken arm at some point in this form with them. So anyway, we've talked about this a lot. I'm not going to go into all the details. I'm sure as I read out from the court, what happened in court or what is happening in court today, because I think they're still continuing. So John is giving John's turn for his defence, and we're going to see what he says. So hi, lovely lurkers. Thank you so much for watching. Hello to replay crew. Equally, thank you. Thank you to all of you for caring about this boy. Thank you to my members. Thank you to those of you who bought Ko-Fi's, sent super stickers. Appreciate it so much. And to all of you who care about Preston, we're going to give Preston a voice. This little baby mattered. He mattered. He might have had a brief life, but he deserved more than he got from these two monster dads, didn't he? Hey, true crime movement. Hi, Jacqueline. Hi, Siobhan. Exactly. Preston absolutely matters. He might have had a short life, but his life is just as important as everybody else. Crime movement, as I say, if you don't know much, now I've got a playlist, but basically it's this little bit who is going for this to the same sex, brief 4 months that he was with them, he sustained over 40 injuries, bruises, internal injuries, bruises to the back of his throat, fractured arm. He was rushed to hospital 3 times. The 3rd time he sadly succumbed. Well, I think he was already dead when they took these dads. It's not only neglect but also abuse, and it's all backed up by videos, photos. You know, this little boy, and also a lot of red flags. Social services should have been aware of it. You know, Jamie was obviously struggling. So, you know, it's and as Siobhan says there, so we've got like we've listened to the prosecution, then Jamie Varley, one of the dads, he's just had his defence, and they brought in, like they always do, bring in an expert to prove everything. But even the expert that came along to, how can I put it, to cast aspersions on the findings, the forensic findings, prosecution experts, the forensic pathologist and 2 doctors, and then he not saying that it couldn't have happened the way the prosecution say it happened, that Preston's airway was obstructed probably as a result of sex abuse. He's not saying that can't be the case. What he's saying is there are other possibilities. So even the defence pathologist, it's not, you know, it's not the sort of thing you'd listen to and think, oh yeah, it's definitely they're innocent, in my opinion. So yeah, it's a very sad case. Thought that Preston was probably already dead before they even took him to the hospital, because he was on bed breathing his last for an hour while they were texting each other about a kayak that they were selling. And in the meantime, Preston is panting like a dog on the bed because he's been sex abused, in my opinion. And this is what the prosecution is saying. And in a way obstructed. Jamie thought it would be the first time, will not be the first time that Preston was abused, and they thought he would bounce back. But he actually said that, because that's what he did on other occasions. So the trial on the other monster dad. I haven't read this yet because I had classes and I had to go off driving, take my son to work. So I've literally only been back 5 minutes, so I haven't read it. Don't know what the contents are. So you and we are reading this together, and it's all new to me anyway. So I can't wait to hear what John's got to say. Just can't wait. And on my community, on both my channels, there is a poll asking, do you think Jamie's guilty? Do you think John's guilty? Are you not sure? Do you think they're innocent, or are you not sure? So please go and participate in that poll. So the jury has returned to court as the defence case for John MG is set to begin. The defendant is swearing the oath on the Bible. Oh, well, it must be true then, everything he says. And he will be asked questions by his barrister, Anne White, KC. So let's just remember that when Jamie Varley, the other dad, when they took poor little already deceased Preston to the hospital, the hospital worked on him for over an hour and they could not bring him back to life. Jamie Varley then tried to take over and do his event, coaxed away. He was screaming for his mum. He was crying out, "Oh, I'm going to go to hell, I've effing killed him." These were the things Jamie was saying on the day. Now, of course, he's saying, "Oh, no, it's nothing to do with him." Yeah. He's a Pinocchio. So, we've got John now in court giving his version of events. And I think I'll put a picture up of him just so you can see him and imagine him talking. So yeah, let's remember they're both sort of what I suppose you'd think they were educated people. They're both working. Jamie Varley, he was head of year at a high school. So he's, isn't it? John, he's a salesperson, not quite clear what he sells, but it's a job where he goes all over the place. Seems like he goes out the country, travels, and it's mainly times when he was traveling that these terrible events would happen. But sometimes they would happen while he was. Defendant confirms he was 30 when Preston died. He is now 32. He was brought up in Cheshire with his parents and grandparents. Now, for any of you, I know that because this all happened, the actual events happened in Blackpool. Cheshire is sort of near Manchester. It's a very posh area. If you don't know it, it's where a lot of, the footballers live from Manchester United, Manchester City. They buy their houses in Cheshire because Cheshire is a salubrious area, let's say. So he was brought up in Cheshire with his parents and grandparents, and he is an only child. He went to Nottingham University in 2011. He spent 6 months in Australia University where he studied history and politics. So he is an educated man. He went on to do a master's in politics and international relations. Oh my God, that's what my degree's in, politics and international relations. I haven't done a master's though. I didn't have parents who could pay for me to do that. He took a year out before continuing a PhD. Oh my God, so he's a very educated man. So he tells, I thoroughly enjoyed my PhD, but I was happier around individuals. I taught undergraduates and I loved that part of academia. A PhD is a lonely route to travel. You are in an office on your own with a computer. I wanted to do what my friends were doing in London with proper jobs and careers. I wanted a piece of that. I began working for a bank, specialising in asset finance. I was a sales manager for an asset finance company, starting in September 2019. In 2022, I was promoted to Northern Sales Manager. Before my relationship with Mr. Varley, I had no criminal convictions, not even a speeding ticket. That's what Mr. Varley says as well. He had no criminal convictions, not even a speeding ticket. Now, I think the problem is, sorry, I've been bitten by a mosquito on my foot and it's really itchy. So itchy, I've got to put some Savlon on that. The problem is, sometimes, of course, we think that educated people who have good jobs, etc., can't be monsters. But you know what? They normally are. Psychopaths are quite often very successful career people, aren't they? Very intelligent. So now he's talking about, how he met Jamie. He says he met Mr. Varley in 2018. 18. university campus and taught first-year undergraduate. Mr. Varley, he says, was working as a teacher in Blackpool. He was in Congleton, Cheshire. He moved to Blackpool in July 2019, but spent a lot of time in the town with Mr. Varley, spending long weekends there at Mr. Varley's previous home in Sunningdale Avenue. He tells the court it was a very loving relationship. Get me a bucket. Is he going to be saying now what look? Oh my God. It was a very loving relationship. Jamie always used to make me laugh. Oh yeah, that's when he sent you those videos of him holding Preston's legs up so he could poo in the bath. We would be giggling all the time. Our personalities, well, there were differences, but we had very strong values. We were like, oh God, oh my God, I can't do this. It's going to make out there's some sort of paragons of virtue. I've always been a very level-headed individual. I know what I want, and I'm not going to waste my time with someone who didn't want what I want. Oh, John. His work ethic was fine. He was the most outgoing. Jamie's very dramatic. Well, we have gathered that. A drama queen, and at times himself as sassy. Sassy to me is a positive trait, and so I cannot associate it with Jamie Varley. You know, he's not sassy. He's a drama queen. He's histrionic. He's all, but to me, I can't think of him as sassy, because sassy, you know, if I describe someone, really sassy, that's a good character. And I cannot see good character in Jamie. I just can't. Not after what he's done to Preston. Even if you take away the sex abuse, it's still horrible the way he's treated him. Let's put Preston up now. It's not sassy. He's a bloody man baby who was screaming for his mum after he'd murdered, allegedly. Not sassy, that's more like psychopathic, as far as I'm concerned, anyway. Hi, Lily. Anyway, I'm sure you'll let me know what you think. Do you think of Sass? Do you think, when I've seen him in his police interviews, he's arrogant, he's accusatory, he talks around in circles? I wouldn't describe him as sassy. Anyway, he thought he was sassy. I'm a more reserved character. I'm happy to take a step back and judge a situation before I go in. He's the opposite. You know, the more I hear from John, the more I'm thinking, is he the more psychopathic one? Because, Jamie is a bit more what you see is what you get, isn't he? He can't hide the way he is. But John's clever, isn't he? He's manipulative, maybe. Anyway, he says Mr. Varley was close to his family, who was spread across the North and Midlands. They saw his mother and stepdad, who lived around the corner, and the defendant went back to Cheshire when he could to visit his family. So they've both got strong families behind them. You know, Jamie seemed very close to his mum, you know, even for a man of nearly 40, screaming for his mum. When he's some cream on this bite. It's driving me mad. Oh, it's so itchy. In his interviews and even in his defence, when he was giving evidence in his defence, he never really said, "Oh, poor Preston, he'll never get to grow up and he'll never get to do this." Preston was consigned to little one. It's all about Jamie, how it's affected him. After starting his job in July 2019 for a finance company, he lived on the M6, he says. "When I first began working for the company, my base was at home. Because I looked after a patch, I would visit Bishop Stortford every month or at least once a quarter. As my employment grew, so did my roles and responsibilities." The defendant says he began looking after bigger multi-million-pound accounts. Oh, so, he's got a very important sort of portfolio. The majority of business was down south, and his role was to grow the Northwest operation. As that grew, the company opened an office in the Northwest to increase presence in the region. Important for us to show we can do business in the North. In 2022, they opened an office on Salford Quays. So for any of you who know Manchester, Salford is a part of Manchester, actually where Old Trafford is, isn't it? Or round about there. My dad used to work in Salford. But Salford Quays is like when they knocked down all the old sort of industrial buildings, etc. It was not a nice place in the end. And they built all these, state-of-the-art offices and modern offices, flats, etc. So it's a very salubrious part of Manchester now. So Mr. GF was the manager of this office in Salford Quays. He said, "I had to be contactable between 9 and 5, but however, as long as I had a phone, internet connection and my laptop, I could sit and work at midnight if I wanted. I would sometimes work earlier, 8:30, and still be working at 6:30. It was a sales role. Sales is not a 9-to-5 job. Good salespeople say if they're working 9-to-5, they aren't doing it right." So he's got this high-flying sales job. And of course, before they got Preston, John was working anyway as a head of year at a school. That would have been long hours as well. So he says they first started talking seriously about adoption in 2021. And from the outset, they both agreed children were in their future. Oh, I wonder why. But were children in their future because they wanted to give a child a home? Or were children in their future because they thought that'd be a good way to get a child that they could abuse? In 2021, he suggested gathering more information, and he took it upon himself to call a few companies and find out what the situation was. This was after they first moved into Staining Road. Staining Road is where Preston sadly, experienced all the abuse that he experienced and where he sadly died. They don't live there anymore, I don't think. Miss Y asked if there was any discussion about getting married. And John said, "I was a bit conservative. I wanted to get married before having children." And then breaking down in tears, he says, "I remember specifically we were at my cousin's wedding and beautiful girl at their wedding. And at the moment, I thought how lovely it would be. Miss White confirms they decided not being married was not a barrier. The defendant adds, it's not something you discuss on a Friday and get on with on a Monday. We would discuss the routes, surrogacy, whether we adopt. I made some calls saying me and my partner are thinking about going down the adoption route. Can you give us an idea of the process? And we took it from there. Maybe they would have been better off with a little girl, because maybe they wouldn't have felt this temptation then to abuse them. I don't know. Decided that Mr. Varley would stay home with the child while Mr. GF continued to work. He explains his role was commission-based and he had great time. He had only changed about 2 nappies in his life and probably held 1 or more babies or children. So he had no experience with babies. So here's a failing straight away because, maybe if someone's planning to adopt and they've got no experience with babies, maybe they should be sent to stay with someone with a baby for a while and just see how difficult it can be. I think people, not only these people, but all of us, you fall in love with the idea of having a baby, don't you? A lot of couples think a baby will bring them closer together. It doesn't. It drives them further apart. Or people's hormones, you get I remember, really getting this sort of urge that I wanted to have a baby as I was coming up to 30, especially. You feel like, I don't know, it's just like an overwhelming, it's hard to explain because it doesn't have a rhyme or reason because it is hormones talking. And then you sort of get quite jealous of people who've got babies, or I did anyway. Sometimes women kidnap babies, don't they? Because they're so desperate for a baby because there's so many people out there they can't have babies. It's a bit of a long story. I think I'll go into it in my book, Confessions of a Spanish Teacher. But when you feel, the thing is, when that decision is taken away from you, if you feel like for whatever reason you're never going to have children, you can get quite obsessive about it. I think that's your hormones talking, personally. But yeah, I suppose, but babies are difficult. Anyway, he had no experience with babies, whereas Mr. Varley had experienced babysitting nieces and nephews. That makes me go cold when I hear that, because I think, what's he done to them? As well as being a teacher and being used to being around children. It made sense, he says. We didn't really discuss it that much. It just made sense for Jamie to be the parent that stayed home and for me to go to work. Maybe Jamie just lost his mind a little bit being, at home all the time. And then he said he was suffering from postpartum depression. That apparently adoptive parents experience. Anyway. At the beginning of the process, a social worker visited the couple at home and looked at their house. She recommended them to go to stage 1, where they were assigned a social worker, the court is told. They went through DBS checks and finance checks. There was some training in stage 1. Half of the first stage dealt with finances, DBS, health checks, Mr. GF says. The latter half was online courses about children who are in the system and why they are in the system, what life history they might have or might not have had, and the effects of issues during pregnancy or lived history. There was a lot of looking at the life the child will have, the defendant says. Miss White asks if there was a lot of emphasis on keeping alive the child's heritage, birth family and family of origin. Miss GF said there was a whole session of fetal alcohol syndrome, and there were group video calls with other parents training on caring for a child, such as nappies and identifying rashes, and there was no safeguarding training at this point. There was then a break between stage 1 and 2 for the couple, so they could see through Mr. Varley's career and seeing the year 11s through to GCSE. Our social worker, Victoria Reader, advised us we were not going to be waiting long for a child to be placed with us. I mean, the problem is there are a lot of children who need adopting, so it's sad, isn't it? So Miss White asked what level of intrusion there was from social services as to what kind of people you might be to look after a child. And the defendant says, I think looking through your banking information, medical information, looking at every doctor's appointment, they go through everything. During stage 2, we had 8 sessions with Vicky, including a session each, one-on-one with Vicky, where they want your entire family history from the day I was born to the day I was sat with her. She did say some people, but I personally found it a bit of a therapy session. I did not mind it. Right, sorry, I've just got to look at a message that came through before because it's about my car that needs the air conditioning gas in. It's been very, very hot today. Oh, right, they want my registration number. I have no idea, so I'll have to look that up. I'll do that in a moment. When they come to a break on here, I'll have a little break just to get a drink and send them my registration number. Hi, Darren. Hi, Seffi. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, this computer's rubbish. Sorry. And it does break up sometimes. Sorry about that. I am going to get it sorted. Okay, so I've set up my chat there so I can see what people are saying as well. Let's put a different picture of little Preston up, hey? I love this picture of him in his little orange jumpsuit. He's so adorable, this kid. So the matching process involves creating portfolios of the couple, which was completed in stage 1, the court hears. Stage 2 pulled together the portfolio and the sessions with Vicky. Jurors are told a few of those sessions were about the type of child we were looking for and the reasons for that. It is said, I remember saying to Vicky, I don't mind if the little boy or girl, whatever heritage they are to me, I don't care if they're black, white, whatever, but Vicky taught us to look at the area you live in, the family you have. You don't want to isolate that child. So there were a lot of thought-provoking discussions. And yeah, of course, it's important, like it or not. If you live in an area where there's not many black people or not many Muslims or not many Asians or, that children don't like to stand out when they're kids, do they? They are to be accepted. I mean, listen, children, in my experience, children bully other children. They'll always find something. You might be too thin, you might be too fat, you might be too tall, you might be too short, you might have ginger hair, or it could be your family or your religion, or children are cruel, sadly, and sometimes I do feel that children have to learn to deal with that. it. You've just got to be realistic. It's just something that sadly that does happen. I think it's important to teach children how to cope with it as well, because it goes into adult life, doesn't it? You know, there are bullies in the workplace. You get bullies throughout life, and you do have to learn to deal with them. And yeah, I think when children, they're fine up to a certain age, aren't they? You know, up to a certain age, children are just accepting, aren't they? Completely accepting, maybe up to 5, 6, 7. And then you'll always get some kids who then start sniggering at the other kids. No, horrible. There are horrible kids. Not all kids are little angels, are they? Got to be, you know, just realistic about that. No, this is the real world that we live in. You know, we don't live in a Disney film. This is the real world. And yeah, you have to teach your child to deal with it, which is difficult. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lily. That's very kind. Thank you so much for the super chat. So what was I going to say then? So so when you're adopting a child, you know, I do agree with that. You know, you have to think these children always go through a stage where all they want is to be like all the other children. You know, they don't want to stand out. When they get older, they go more for their individuality, won't they? But there's a point where they just want to be accepted by their peers. And, you know, that's all that matters, to be honest, isn't it, at some point? School's a very difficult place, I think, for children. Anyway, so yeah, if you're thinking about adopting, you have to think how that child is going to fit in with your family and stuff like that, because families as well, they're not all nice, sweetness and light, are they? On my channel, when I was young, I was married very briefly to someone from Hong Kong, and you know, so your family. Most of my family were accepting, but there were certain ones, in-laws, for example. You know, literally once we were sat at, and my brother-in-law, I've had a lot of brother-in-laws because my sisters have had quite a few different husbands and boyfriends. But one of them, I won't say particularly which one, looked at me. I mean, my husband, he could speak English. You know, he wasn't speaking in Chinese all the time. But you know, this guy looked at me, just ignored the fact that my ex-husband was sitting next to me, looked directly at me, pointed at him, and said, "Does he speak English?" You know, like indicated towards him, and said, "Does he speak English?" And I said, "Well, why don't you ask him?" You know, it's like, what are you asking me for? He sat right next to you. So the point I'm trying to say is, you know, you can't rely on your family to be accepting. You just can't. You can hope that they will be, but you can't be 100% certain. So if you are adopting a child, yeah, they do have to sort of fit in really to your environment for their own good, if you like, because they don't want to, you know, you don't want them to feel isolated or different, you know. Thank you, Lily, so much for that. And although probably a lot of people, maybe 90% of people will be kind and not, only take 1% to make a child feel bad and you know, ruin that child's life. It only takes one person. You know what it's like. You know, people can say a million nice things to you, and then you always remember the horrible things somebody said, don't you? You know, that's, you know, I find that with my students with Spanish classes, they can get 19 questions right, they get one wrong, and they focus on the one they get wrong. Something in our makeup makes us remember things like that more instead of all the positivity. So there you go, I was waffling there. Somebody put the waffle. I need the waffle thing up. So this social worker said to him, "You don't want to isolate that child." So there were a lot of thought-provoking discussion as a couple, and children's social workers can view it when looking at prospective parents. Once they're approved as adopters, they can look at the profiles of the children on the site. Ooh, well, it's like, ooh, that could be used in the wrong way, couldn't it? If you've got like a PDF looking at that and say, oh yeah, that one looks right, yeah, I'm not sure about that. There are children whose images are hidden and children whose images are shown. So Miss White says, what did you like about Preston? And he says, Amy Shepherdson wrote the most beautiful profile of Preston. There were no images. We saw a profile of another little boy who was a beautiful little boy. We learned he was going through a bit more of a serious process with his parents. Then we saw this profile of Baby P. Baby P, that's not a very fortunate name. Isn't that the name of that baby whose parents killed it? Of Preston, we didn't know his name. I remember reading it and showing it to Jamie and laughing. She wrote this little bit that said he demands what's on TV by screaming or giggling or vocalising to have his favourite programme. I said to Jamie, bloody Nora, that's just like you, that is. And I just thought, that's our little boy. Dear me. I don't like this man. Sorry, I don't like him. I think he's condescending. But anyway, Miss White now asks about parenting training in terms of physical safety and safeguarding. The defendant says he asked Jamie's sister if he could help with nappy changes to get some experience. Oh my God, so Jamie's sister had a baby. Oh, I can't even think about it. They also did VR training about the type of lived experience that the child could have had. There was a reality when you were in the womb and could hear verbal abuse. There was another situation where you were a baby living in a drug abusive home, which was quite alarming, he says. Well, babies can definitely hear what's going on, can't they? I'll never forget walking into a discotheque when I was pregnant, and the music was really loud, like bump, bump. And my son, who obviously was in the womb at the time, he just started, like, he was really startled, you could tell. He just started going, I don't know, think he was dancing, maybe he was dancing, but he just started turning over and over and over. I was about 6 months pregnant. Walked into this disco with this loud music. So they can definitely hear, definitely, can't they? Inside the womb. In terms of their own training, they knew it was important to form a close-knit bubble when the child first arrives home. No one is really allowed to see a child for the first few weeks to enable a bond to be formed as primary caregivers before wider family introductions. There was a bump into meeting shortly before the couple went to panel for Preston. The defendant says they were made aware of Preston's issues with reflux and lactose intolerance. At the bump into meeting with Preston, his foster parents and his social worker, Amy, they were holding him to have pictures taken. And that's when Jamie pointed out that Preston had a little bit of a squint. I didn't notice it. I was too much in the moment, but Jamie spotted it. They're making a big deal about this squint. Anyway, after the bump into meeting, they went to a panel for the adoption to be approved. Once it was approved, a programme of introductions was approved, starting with the couple visiting the foster home. On the first day, it was a short meeting where they stayed about an hour and a half, played and had a coffee and left. The next meeting was longer. Another meeting, they met them while they were out. As the introductions went on, they went from observing routines to actually doing it. Sandra said this was going to be her last baby. Oh, so she gave us lots of things, probably to prevent her getting another one. There was particular emphasis on his nighttime and his medication. After introductions at Sandra and Paul's, there was a short get-together with all parties, and a decision was taken to transfer the introductions to John and Jamie's house. Miss White asks why they bought a bath seat, and Mr. GF explains that they had held a chosen shower, their equivalent of a baby shower, and the bath seat was a gift. At that stage, they had never bathed Preston. Miss White asks about Free Willy time. Do you remember this? So Free Willy time, these two men, but she didn't believe the foster parent or these two swans. Ooh, that's a difficult one. Anyway, Mr. GF says that was a phrase used by Sandra, and she had Preston in his cot and took his nappy off. She said it was good to get air to the child, which I'm sure she did say that. But did she call it Free Willy time? You know, that's what they said, but she denies it. I found it hysterical, the defendant says. My favourite film when I was a child was Free Willy. I've never heard of this one before. He says he thought nothing of it really, it was just a throwaway comment. Miss White shows a photo of Mr. McGowan-Fazakerley feeding Preston from a pouch of baby food on his first day at the house in Stanian Avenue. The defendant says they had already done all the things they needed to before. That weekend was magical, it was fantastic. My mother came over to stay with us because we knew we would be out. She came to make food for us and clean the house for us because I didn't want him to come home and the house not to be clean and tidy or smell fresh. The first day they transitioned to Staining Road, Sandra brought him and stayed a few hours before taking him home. The first overnight stay, the foster mum stayed at a local hotel so she could be there if they needed extra support. It was also too much for her to drive back and forth. The defendant says they were told everything should be the same, smell the same as Sandra and Paul's before Preston came home. They were told to use the same laundry products so his clothes would smell the same. Use the mattress topper from the foster home. And Mr. GF said Preston's sleep was an absolute nightmare. It's a shock to the system. You have a little baby who needs you and you are their caregiver. That's a massive adjustment. But particularly taking it back to that time, it was particularly tough to the point Jamie would sleep in his dressing gown. He was up that much. We used to screenshot the times he was up. It was 10 or 11 times a night. So they knew, didn't they? Anyway, Preston's reflux started as just a little bit, but his reflux medication was at the highest dose. Some mornings he would be sick, otherwise not. The defendant recalls the first dad moment where Preston vomited all into his clothes. Mr. McGowan-Fazakerley took 2 weeks of paternity leave and a week of holiday, he says. The jury was shown photos of Preston out and about in the first weeks of his life with the couple. Easter egg hunts, picture at tumble tops. The defendant says he took advice from the social worker about Preston's sleep issues. They were advised a bath might soothe him, bath oils. He says they worked together and it was important he got the sleep routine nailed. He really tried to get it nailed and he did. He didn't want me to be on the M6 tired. His sister is a sleep nanny and she gave us loads of advice about dream feeds, 45-minute sleep cycle, and so on. He says sometimes he would get up to the baby in the night, but Jamie would sometimes already be there. He would just hear him and go and see to him. He says he did more at the weekend. Was it a so? I'd say we doted on him. I doted on him. I saw Jamie doting on him. Us needing to get up and see to him is just what a parent does and what a parent is. My workplace were ace. They were absolutely brilliant. They bought us loads of gifts, vouchers. They got a big box, a memory box, put his name on it. They couldn't have been more supportive. Everyone knew at work we were having a son, and all my accounts and sales guys knew I was having a son. I shouted it from the rooftops. They were brilliant. So, for the first 2 weeks after returning to work, the defendant says he restricted his movements to an hour or an hour and a half radius from home. He booked meetings for the morning so he could get home in the evening. In the morning, he says he would go into Preston, put toys in the cot, go and make 2 cups of coffee, get Preston up and change him or take him to their room. In the evening, they had a habit of texting or calling to say he was on the way home. The defendant says he really tried not to pick up his work phone at home, so the odd occasion after a meeting, he would do emails at a motorway services to send emails so he had nothing left to do at home. Now, they had a short break there. I'm just going to have a break because I've got to send my car registration number to get my quote for the air conditioning in the car, the regassing. I'm going to get another drink and I may have a bathroom break. So I will be back in, won't be 9 seconds like Erin Patterson. It will be 5 minutes, let's say. I'll be back in 5 minutes. I'll put a picture of Preston up. Have I got a back in 5 minutes thing? I probably have. Be right back. Let's see. So this is your time as well. Get a cup of tea. Be right back. It won't. There you go. Be right back. Get yourself a cup of tea or something. I literally will Okay, I'm back. I'm back in the room. I'm back in the room. Sorry about that. So yeah, I just had to send a message, get a drink, etc. So I'm back. Let's carry on. So after the break, Mr. GF said they decided to move house after coming across the area by chance. He said the rural location and schools presented an opportunity for the life that they wanted. He tells the court they wanted to change the flooring so it was more suitable for a toddler. Yeah, they keep calling him a toddler, but anyway, he would be a toddler eventually. Well, if they wouldn't have murdered him, right? So Miss White allegedly asked how their relationship changed with a little one in the house. A little one. Why do they keep saying? Why do I feel this is the most condescending way to describe this kid? A little one. His name is Preston. He has a name, or Elijah, which is the name they gave him. Why keep calling him little one? So, here's the crux of it, isn't it? Mr. GF says their SEX relationship changed. This was an issue for a short while. Yeah, until they started using Preston, wasn't it? As some sort of SEX toy. That's how it feels to me, anyway. So, this was an issue for a short while and they had a bicker about it. That was mostly from his side, he says. So he's saying that it was Jamie who felt like his SEX life was, off track. Oh, dear me. It wasn't serious at all, he says. I remember getting frustrated with him and saying in a funny way, "How many takeaways have you had?" And sort of stormed off into the bedroom and did a text message back to him and made up. We've never gone to bed on an argument. We've always made up beforehand. Not my finest hour at all, he adds. Naturally, levels of stress increases, washing increases, chores increase, responsibilities increase. For me, it was just welcome to parenthood. This is what it's like. I mean, they had a choice. This is what I just don't understand. They had a choice whether to have children or not, and they chose to have a baby. Why did they even bother? And then suddenly, oh gosh, it's difficult. Of course, it's difficult. Everybody knows that. So Miss White asked if he ever regretted. We did struggle with sleep, ourselves and Preston. But every single morning he would wake up a ray of sunshine and make it all worthwhile. Now that's not true. That is a lie. That they enjoyed him waking up as a ray of sunshine. Because do you remember when Jamie was testifying? He said they would leave Preston in his cot, try and get him to, occupy himself. They would put toys in his cot so they could have come round more gradually. They weren't up at the crack of dawn in to see if he was okay and hello, ray of sunshine. They were trying to encourage him to just sleep in. Oh, it was always a positive. Sorry, I can't help but put this voice on. It was always a positive household. At the time, living in that house before Preston arrived and during Preston being with us, it was a normal household with normal bickers, not putting the toilet seat down, leaving marks on the seat, not scraping the shower door after a shower, not putting clothes in the washing machine. There were times Jamie would cook a meal and I'd be thinking, I'm going to walk in there and every single pot and pan has been used and I'll just have to spend half an hour clearing up just domestic bickers. There was never a moment where the thought never came into my mind that I didn't want to go home. I lived for going home. I don't think that's true. Certainly, Jamie didn't think so, did he? You know, I bet he. Anyway, he says no. He says he couldn't wait to go home. Don't know about that, but we'll see. Mr. GF says he spent his time Monday to Friday constantly on his work phone. The last thing he wanted to do when he got home was to be on his private phone. He says it was his partner's responsibility to make arrangements to meet family, and he would just turn up. He tells the jury he did not really Snapchat photos, and he remembers Mr. Varley sending the video Preston and Mr. Varley in the kitchen, because his partner said he never took pictures or videos. Mr. White says Mr. Varley sent the defendant lots of pictures and videos. And Mr. GF says he was inundated by them. Yeah, because he was always trying to say to him, look, I'm looking after this baby, you're gadding around working with your colleagues. I think he thought he was having an affair or something. And so he was inundating him with these photos, wasn't he? But of course they were inappropriate photos. A lot of them were inappropriate photos. So Miss White asks about the bond each parent had with Preston and how they compared. Jamie took to parenthood like a duck to water. He very, very quickly bonded, and he could do everything Preston wanted or needed in a very quick manner. He bonded very, very quickly, in my opinion. He doted, absolutely doted on Preston. I was nervous. I wasn't nervous I wouldn't bond. I knew I would bond, but I was nervous that I had to go back to work in a couple of weeks. Jamie needs to work on his sleep, and as the primary caregiver, he'd have to do a lot. I'm going back to work in a few weeks, and I was nervous I wouldn't have that quick and immediate bond. Now it couldn't be further from the truth. I bonded with him quickly, but not as quickly as Jamie did. Yeah, Jamie bonded with him so closely he was tormenting him. The defendant says he wasn't aware of messages Mr. Varley sent to friends and colleagues that suggested he was struggling with parenthood. In terms of what he could see himself, he says he knew they were struggling with the sleep routine. Preston was awake a lot in the night and needed consoling, which took a while to fix, but the only element of struggle was his sleep, he says. Jamie would sometimes call me when I was at the Salford office and I wasn't in a meeting. He'd say, I'm bored, give me some ideas of where to do or where to go and what centre by himself. He told me that when he was by himself he wanted to fill the time. And Miss White asked about a link sent from Mr. Varley, referring to postpartum depression in adoptive parents. Mr. GF says he doesn't remember seeing the link, but Edson mentioned the phrase postpartum depression in adoptive parents to say this is a thing. Whatever. I don't recall or remember seeing it, but from what he's like as an individual, he would have asked me to have a look to see if there was anything to pick up on. He confirms he doesn't say he didn't see it, he just doesn't recall. The defendant says Mr. Varley struggled with worry and constantly wanted to. I mean, these are lies. These are absolute lies. And I'll tell you why they're lies. Because if he constantly wanted to check him, why did he leave him for 14 minutes on his own in the bath? Why did he leave him on the bed gasping for breath for over an hour? Why did he spin him round in the at the park till his eyes rocked back in his head? He did not care. He did not worry about Preston. Did not. That is just not true. Sorry, but that is blatantly not true. He says it was terrifying for him. Oh, so because he had the experience of rushing Preston to hospital and seeing him have a seizure on an A&E table. He says it was terrifying for him, and it was over once he arrived. So it must have been terrifying for Mr. Varley. So yeah, because Preston was having these seizures, which makes you wonder what they were caused by, doesn't it? Anyway, our partner became very protective of Preston. Not overly protective, but he doted on him. He wanted to make sure he was okay. He'd move things out of the way so if he reached up, it wouldn't fall on him. He did loads of things to show his caring nature. He also said his cousin died following a seizure, so knowing Jamie, it would have been on his mind, his concern for him and wanting to make sure he was okay. Okay. On June the 11th, 2023, Mr. Varley sent a message to a colleague which mentioned not wanting to be here. However, GF says his partner never expressed anything to suggest he may harm himself or Preston. He says there was never a moment he questioned Mr. Varley's ability to parent Preston, or a time he was worried about leaving the house due to his mental health. He says he doesn't know why Mr. Varley sent messages expressing guilt about Preston's injured arm. He says he recalls coming home from work and Preston's social worker Amy was there. He says they both said, "What are you blaming yourself for?" He says that from what he knows, his partner never asked any friends or family for any medication. The only medication he knew his partner took was his own reflux medication. Speaking about a time they met a work colleague of Mr. Varley at the De Vere Hotel, he says he recalls saying he would meet for a pint and go home. And when he arrived, he says Preston was on the floor on a blanket. Mr. Varley went to the bar and Preston went to hold his leg. So Mr. GF picked Preston up and took him to get some fresh air. I don't know if that makes sense. I didn't think anything to make a doctor's appointment and rung Amy. If he feels he needs to take antidepressants for his mental health, his social worker needs to be involved. He's a looked after child. He's under social services. It's common sense, he says. So then he says he was aware of a meeting planned with Mr. Varley's head teacher, Rebecca Warhurst, on July the 13th. He said prior to the meeting, he was aware that Mr. Varley was irritated about the marking of GCSE coursework and had arranged to go to school to assist with marking, but his head of department had already started the work. Jamie felt his students had been marked down. He said they weren't getting the marks they deserved, and he didn't want to communicate with that member of staff by message. Secondly, when Jamie left for his head of year responsibilities to another staff member, I don't know if there was an accusation about Jamie spending all the prom money or something. Oh, so this is a new thing, isn't it? So, allegedly, allegedly, did he spend the prom money? There's more to this case, isn't there? There's much more to it. I think when the actual case is finished and the verdict, many more things. You know, do you agree? Do you feel like there's more to this case? Do you feel like there's more to this case? And now we're hearing about prom money that went missing. You know, is he drinking? I think he might be either drinking or taking substances, or maybe even both. I think that's how he's ended up losing control. I think he felt that friends at work, because he wasn't there, dropped him out of sight, out of mind. He says by the time of the meeting on July the 13th, Preston's sleep was fine. There had been the first hospital admission and the worry of that, and then there was a second hospital admission, and Mr. Varley worried about Preston's health. A load of bollocks. He didn't care about Preston's health, you fool. He did not care about Preston's health. That is just simply not true. Because if he came those spinning cups until he was so dizzy he couldn't open his eyes, he wouldn't have yanked him as he was dancing Let's Twist again with him, wouldn't have left him in the bath alone for 14 minutes, wouldn't have left him on the bed panting like a dog that can't get his breath for over an hour. He did not care. That is just not true. Anyway, the defendant says he faced redundancy in 2020 when COVID hit, but he did not personally face any redundancy after that time. He says there may have been some departments which were making redundancy, but not his, while Preston was living with them, and he said he never told Mr. Varley his job was at risk. So then Miss White asks about a conversation in which it's reported Mr. Varley told colleague Janet G he had dark thoughts. Thoughts about drowning or smothering. I don't know what you would do if your friend told you that. You know, they've got a baby in their care, adopted or not, and they tell you they've got dark thoughts about drowning them or smothering them. Wouldn't you go to the social worker or recommend to them to go to a doctor? I don't know. Just seems. How would you ignore that? Says Mr. Varley asked him to collect Preston from Mrs. G's house as he wanted to discuss. He collected Preston and took him home. He said it's with the pram, but he just seemed like himself. And he says Jamie has never told me he feels suicidal or wants to take his own life. If those conversations happened, I feel quite, well, it's a strong word to use, but it's how I feel. I feel disturbed that if those conversations happened, why did nobody tell me about them? Yeah, you would at least go and talk to their partner, wouldn't you? Mr. White reminds everyone that Mr. Varley disputes those conversations. Sorry, Miss White. So yeah, it's important to say that Jamie says, this is one of the times when Jamie says the other person's lying or isn't remembering properly. Jamie said he never said that. So Miss White says he disputes those conversations, but given what he said, I feel. I feel heartbroken, he says. I remember when that statement from Mrs. G was read out to me. I thought, she's got my telephone number, she's got my number, she's a friend. Why on earth would she not pick up that phone and tell me about that conversation? He says he believes Mrs. And there were conversations with professionals, but nobody told me, nobody told Amy, nobody rang social services, nobody did anything. No, nobody did do anything. Mr. GF says while he was at work, his partner was out and about with Preston. He spent a lot of time with Mr. Valley's mum, or taking shopping trips, or out with the dog. I never felt like Jamie was stuck in. He wasn't going out. He was constantly doing things. He bought a bat carrier to put Preston in and go for walks. Preston was completely visible to his social worker, our social worker, health visitor. And Miss White shows a number of photos showing Preston at a picnic and at the zoo. She says Mr. Valley's colleagues got him a season pass to Blackpool Zoo as part of his paternity leave, which they use. Now the thing is, you do crave adult company. I was a single parent all the time my child was young. Well, most, anyway, most of the time. So it is crushingly lonely being a single, but he's not a single parent. At least he had someone coming home at night. He had his mum up the road. He had friends. I just don't buy this. And he chose to have a year off. He chose that. I don't know. I just don't get this whole thing. Honestly, I don't. So she says that Miss White asked about a time Mr. GF went to apologise to the neighbours. He says Preston had not been with them long, and the neighbour's son lived on the opposite side of the wall to Preston. We didn't want Preston being awake at night and us getting the sleep routine to impact their child. It's not fair, so we had a conversation. I said, I'll just go and knock, and if he's keeping him awake, we'll move him to the back bedroom. They were really kind, and they said, don't worry. Mr. GF says he wasn't particularly concerned about having a dog and an infant, but he was concerned about Maximum, their dog, who was a bit of a handful, he says. Maximum was a COVID puppy and a rescue, and they were his third family. God. I was concerned Maximum might be a bit too much. How many people got dogs during COVID? Just to have a dog to take out for a walk. They didn't really want a dog. This is what this couple are like. They do whatever's in the fashion, don't they? I was concerned Maximum would be a little bit too much. He calmed down a bit with a little bit more training. He says they had a dog assessment carried out. He says during the stage one assessment, the dog didn't get the attention he wanted and jumped up on the social worker. So they agreed it would be a good idea to get him assessed and get some advice. Miss White now asks about photos which the prosecution rely on in their case. She will ask Mr. GF about the charge of causing or allowing the death of a child. He says there was never a time he felt there was a level of risk from Mr. Varley towards Preston. He doted on him. He took to parenthood like a duck to water. He cared for him. He was loving, affectionate father. He did everything right that I saw. He was, he never did anything in my eyesight when I was at home that made me question leaving my little boy with Jamie. He's not going to be here anymore. My little boy was never your little boy. God, you'd only had him 4 months. And the 4 months that you had him, you treated him terribly. And his name is Preston or Elijah, but he's got a name. Doesn't use his name. Miss White says the charge says he should have foreseen or did foresee the circumstances in which Preston died. If I had an instinct that my world was going to collapse on itself that day, I would not sit here and do nothing about it if I thought anything was going to happen. I would have picked Preston up. I would have ran out of that house if I could foresee or foresaw anything to happen that would mean my son wouldn't be here. Again, doesn't mention his name. To this day, do you feel you know what happened on the 27th of July? Miss White asks, and he says, no. Is he going to throw Jamie under the bus? Oh my God, there's so much of this. I may have to take a break soon because I can feel my voice is going. Miss White asks about a separate charge of cruelty in which it is alleged that GF failed to protect Preston from physical harm. And he says, I have never seen Jamie or anyone hit, punch, kick, poke, smack or bite my son. My son, not Preston. And if I thought that Jamie or anybody for that matter who had a degree of responsibility for his care did any of those things, I would have done something about it. I would have picked him up and removed him from the house. What, if any, trust did you have in Mr. Varley's ability to parent responsibly? He was asked. And he said, I trusted Jamie indefinitely. There was never a moment I didn't trust him to care for him in the way I saw him do so. He always showed me care. I always felt he wrapped him up in cotton wool. He did. He was always protective of him. He wanted the best for him. I remember we had gone into a cafe in Fleetwood and he was being happy and giggly and laughing. And some people made a comment, you need to make that child be quiet. Jamie stood up for him. He said, he's happy and giggling. Please don't speak, allow anyone to disrespect him. Oh. Well, no, you know. Anyway, you can't even go there. He wouldn't allow anyone to disrespect him. Allegedly, I did everything a parent would do in terms of his care. There was nothing Jamie prevented me from doing. The only aspect of his life Jamie controlled was his clothes. I feel like these two are going to fall out one way or another. I don't know. Mr. GF is being shown a photo of Preston in the bath. He says he doesn't remember that particular bath, but he recalls the photo as he had it as a screensaver on his phone. Miss White shows a photo of Preston with a bottle in which he has a small bruise on his head. The defendant says he can't remember every bruise he had on his forehead. You know, I don't agree with that. I think he would remember every bruise. And he doesn't recall either of the social workers who visited the following day asking about it. He says that Amy had seen Preston living his everyday life, falling, flopping, banging his head, and the defendants acting quickly to stop him. Oh, such heroes. Well, they didn't do very well because he had 40 odd injuries. when he died. So, yeah, didn't act quickly enough, did you then, really? So another photo shows a cluster of bruises to Preston's forehead, which Dr. Gifford suggested was inflicted harm. And GF says he remembered Preston having bruises on his forehead frequently. He says Preston would pick things up with his mouth, bang his head, he would catch things with his arms and fall, and he banged his head on the bifold doors. So then they broke for lunch. Now, let's see where we are now, because I might have to break off now. Yeah, there's still quite a lot to go. So I'm going to break there, because that was the morning session. They're still going around the afternoon session. But I'm going to have a little break. And I'll either be back later on today, but probably in the morning with the rest of it. I just, need to make some lunch. I'm getting tired. I need to swap the dogs over. Oh, it'd be great, wouldn't it, if you could just get on with things and you didn't have all the other things to cope. Oh, do you know, it's hard work, isn't it, having dogs? You have to do things. But I think what I'm trying to say is, do you end up adopting a baby and then you're surprised that they're hard work? So I know dogs are hard work, but probably, and I always say, I'm never having any more dogs. I've said that every time I've had dogs. And then, of course, when it comes to the sad time where you have to let go of them for whatever reason. I mean, my last dogs, one lived to 20 and the other lived to 17. So they did quite well. I remember thinking and saying, not having any more dogs, too much hard work, blah, de, blah, de, blah. But of course, I ended up getting more dogs. And then my son moved back in and he's got a dog. So we've got 3 dogs. So what I'm trying to say is I know dogs are hard work, just like, babies are hard work. This couple had a choice. They weren't just presented with a baby, look after that, or, just, it wasn't, and knows it. They chose to have Preston. But really, they just wanted, how can I explain it? They didn't want everything that comes with having a baby, did they? They wanted to be out there saying, oh, we've got a baby, and all the nice sort of things about it, like the hard work that's involved in it. And then I do think there is more to this case as well. I wonder if they did deliberately get a baby to, do more things to it. It wouldn't be the first time. We don't know. There's a lot more to come there still. The court is still going. What I've noticed is, when they go for a full day, they really go for it. So some days they've gone at 5:30, and it's only 3:30, so they could go on for another 2 hours. So I am going to go and have a break, and I will be back either later, but probably more likely in the morning. So I just want to say again, thank you so much, Lily. You are so supportive. Thank you so much. The way you support my channel, it's really appreciated. And thank you to all of you that care about Preston, that have listened. Please like, please subscribe, and share. And see you really soon in the next video. And until else, may your God go with you. Thank you. What fallen it's coming to that afternoon. It's must nearly siesta time as well. Thank you. Bye.